So, but I do want to, before we start with the Parasha, I do want to finish off that thought. So, with the fact of sinning and then sinning again and then doing repentance and sinning again, this vicious cycle is what we call human nature. So it's not like, obviously a person should refrain from, ever sinning and relapsing again into their old thing, but not that should discourage somebody from continuing to do tshuva. Some people will say, what's the point of doing tshuva? It's just going to happen again, right? First of all, by saying that already, you're invalidating the tshuva. Because the tshuva means that you're regretting it and you're not going to do it again. By saying that, it's going to happen again, that means already that your tshuva is not 100%. But again, somebody has to be real with themselves. And even if they know that it's so hard and something that it's going to be maybe probable that they're going to sin again, they still should do tshuva. Well, it doesn't. And put it this way: if somebody would God forbid leave the earth that day, I'm guaranteed you would rather have done tshuva for that day, as opposed to having that maybe I'll do it when
right.
when I get older, so I don't have these hormones or whatever
right.
the theory is.
Maybe that's why they asked for the God to have the sickness before the death, for them to have a chance of doing the tshuva.
So yeah.
But again, it still sounds to me that it's a little like a way out.
Tshuva?
Yeah, you understand what I'm saying?
Tshuva is
it's not like you're really doing it, because if you're still gonna sin on the different things, that means you didn't regret what you did before.
Or you might not. You start do tshuva, you start doing things.
That's true also.
And you might say, you know what? Сегодня I'm gonna do one thing, and then tomorrow you say, let me keep kosher, let me do this. One thing leads to another. You never know.
I agree, but then again, like you said, you cheated on your wife. You regretted it.
Okay.
Then a week later,
You get drunk and
right.
Party.
You went to a party. You sinned. The next morning you did again. You said, "I'm sorry, I regret it." It can get a constant thing into a person. Oh, you know what? I sinned, but I said I regret it, and it goes on.
That's what you have to learn about tshuva. The real you have to learn halachot tshuva. Usually, what we do before this class is I learn with Abraham, our Katie, we learn a little bit of halachot tshuva from inside a book.
Really?
So we just started it. Yeah, we do it a little bit beforehand. Today I was running late. I wasn't able to. He wasn't either able to. But the real thing is you have to learn what real tshuva is. That's the bottom line. Because you're right, and you fall. But people are always going to mess up, right? We're humans. Even righteous people.
I agree, but I agree. Everybody, that's why we're people. We mess up, we do different things, but again, it could get a habit of a person.
Yeah, it's a cycle of it's just like you do it. You get a cut, you just put a band on. You don't even think about it. Not
Exactly.
getting.
Okay, I'll get another cut. I'll put another band.
Right.
Rabbi is right. We don't know meaning of a lot of things. Like
That's why I asked.
We always think Parnasa. It's what's
Exactly.
Parnasa? We think it's money that we make, but it's the more I read about it, it's so much more than that we don't know anything. By the way,
that's why when I heard about tshuva, that's why I asked you, what is actual tshuva?
The Rambam says it's those three things. If you go look at Rabbi Yehoshua, the Shari Tshuva, which is another book of tshuva, it brings down 20 different parts of, which is what we're going through before this class usually. So
Maybe that's what we should do a class also on tshuva.
Tshuva is very important.
And on Parnasa.
Parnasa I want to do. I have a whole series on money in general.
But it's not only about money. From Parnasa, it's not only money that we're under the impression it's about money, but it's not.
No, Parnasa is laws of money. What I would do, I think okay. So what are you talking about? I think we're talking about two different things. You're talking about the Parnasa. What I'm talking about is all laws related to money, how to deal in business and how to, anything you find money, things like that. Skulot for having an easier Parnasa, that type of. It's a long one, but we should also do that. Okay. So let's begin with this Parasha Mishpatim. This is a very, very heavy Parasha. It has a lot of laws inside it. I think, if I'm not mistaken, it has 53 laws that we derive from this week's Parasha for the 613 laws, right? So I was thinking how to go through it. Should we go through each single one in line? But then I'm just going to be just like reading off laws, And so I think we'll speak about categories, and then we'll pick on certain things in more depth. And then we'll go to the reincarnation. We have the last part of the shiur. Okay. So this week's Parasha is right after the Parasha of Yitro, which was the getting the 10 Commandments. Now, if you just think about it, you ever wonder, the non-Jews, they have 7 Noach laws, right? They got to keep 7 laws, and that's it, and they're good. Then the Jews have 613 laws. It's like, it seems like we got the bad end of the deal if you think about it. Why do we have so many and they have so little? Right? So obviously there's the rule is with more responsibility, there's more reward, right? The example that I always use is there's a reason why the CEO gets much more money than the manager, right? The manager deals with his little group of people. The CEO has dealing with the whole company. So if one manager is doing bad, it's on him. This manager is only whatever his that. So the more responsibility, the more reward. So you could also think of it as it's a very interesting parable to try to explain this, and that is, if you have a guy that walks into a medical office, and let's use a hospital, and he sees 2 people that are sick there. One guy is on like IVs and like there's like he looks terrible, and the other guy it looks like he's doing all right. Now the doctor goes in, picks up the charts for both of them, and he goes to the nurse and tells her, listen, says this guy is on V, take him off the IV, feed him whatever he wants, do whatever you want with him. He could whatever he wants, you could get. But this guy, the guy who's healthy, you put him on the IVs, you do all these, he can't eat this, you can't eat this, you have to start all this, harsh medical regimen. So the guy standing there is like, why does he hate this guy and he loves this guy? He's taking him off all the bad medicine and this, and he's giving him all the good stuff for this guy. So the reason is because the doctor saw that the guy who's on all these IVs already, he's a lost case. His blood work is showing that he's not going to live that much longer. All his tests are coming back positive. He doesn't have much time. So the doctor says, it's better to not have him suffer with all these wires and this and that. Let him just live out the rest of his life in peace. And there's no hope for him. As opposed to the other guy, he sees that there's hope. There's something we can do. He says, no, if we restrict his diet, if we give him this certain medication, if he's going to be a little bit tough, we can get him better. That's the difference between the Jews and the non-Jews. The Jews, we were the chosen people that God said that we have certain souls, that we have the ability, we have that hope to be able to strive for more. It says these people, give them a harsh regimen. Give them all the 613 mitzvot, because they can handle it and they can gain from it. The non-Jews, they could convert if they want to, by all means, but there's the type of case that it's like, it's better not to. Let them just live out their life. And this we learn also, after Motzei Shabbat, we say something called V'iten Lecha. Right? It's a prayer that we ask for. It's from the blessing that, if I'm not mistaken, that Isaac gave Jacob versus Isaac gave Esau. Right? So when Isaac gave a blessing to Jacob, he says, "Ve'etin lecha Elokim et hashamayim," and then God is going to give you from the fat of the earth. But the word that he used for God is Elokim, which is something that's no strict judgment. And for Esau, he just said, "Let God give you all the good stuff." So the question is, listen, why are you using for the Jews the God of strict justice? And for Esau, you just give him everything. And the answer is because for the Jews, if it's a strict God and it says, okay, if I'm going to hold you back some money over here, you're going to start thinking and be like, okay, why is God not giving me this over here? Why did bad things happen to me? You're going to start thinking, okay, maybe I got to work myself. Maybe I got to fix myself. There is hope that this guy, he's going to listen, right? He's intelligent, he's going to be able to deal with the situation, and he's going to be able to learn from the situation. As opposed to somebody who's a lost cause, like no matter how much stuff you're going to throw at him, he's not going to gain from it. He's just going to go against you. And so it says, just give him, just give. That's why specifically when Yitzchak gave the bracha for Yaakov, he says it with the word Elokim. Beitin Chai Elokim mital Shemai. As opposed to Esav, he says Mishmanei Haaretz. Just give him from the fats of the earth. So that's why we got, you ask a bunch of people. So let's say you had a choice. You had a choice that you could be either Jewish or non-Jewish. What would you choose? And unfortunately, many people would say, to be honest, non-Jew. People, it's easier. And it's an easier life, and I can still go to heaven. And it's unfortunate because they don't. It's true, the truth, because that's how they really feel. But it's a lack of knowledge that they don't understand what they have. It's like somebody who has diamonds in his pocket and doesn't know what it's worth. So we do have a lot more mitzvot than the non-Jews, but it comes with a lot of value to us. So.
Is there any comparisons of their portion in heaven and ours? Like anything went down?
It doesn't really speak of it, but obviously it's less. But you can have people, non-Jews, that are higher than Jews.
But they're supposed to be like, if you compare a gadol to, I don't know, someone amazing like Gandhi. I don't know if he's considered amazing.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying.
Like, can they be on?
They're not going to be on the same level.
They somehow, but there's nothing.
Even let's say the most righteous Gentile in the entire world. It wouldn't come nowhere close to the most righteous Jew. Yeah, I don't know.
Be higher than...
Technically speaking, there's some Jews that don't, they don't do much good in their life. They'll put on tefillin once in their bar mitzvah. Or
or they do the opposite.
Yeah, they do that. Yeah, they do the opposite. That they get much, So it really, there's a lot. It depends on a lot. And again, it's something that we can only it's like we're not God's accountant. I can't say this guy deserves level 6, and this guy's level 5, and this guy's level 4, and this guy give level 7. He's good. In my books. Who are we to judge? We don't know anything, right? You can see some guy, by the way. You can see some guy in the street. He looks like a big punk, earrings, tattoos, but in his small little yarmulke, he decided he found God, right? Had a near-death experience, and he could be more righteous than a guy with a big beard.
Yeah, that's true.
You never know. So you see people, and that's why there's a Gemara that says that Moses asked God. He says, I don't understand why do we see righteous people suffer and wicked people prosper? So the Gemara goes back and forth. The son of a righteous, the son of a wicked. But at the end of the day, the Gemara comes to Maskana, the ending saying like, when you see somebody righteous, he might not be completely righteous. And when you see the guy that's wicked, he might not be completely wicked. Which means that only God can judge at the end of the day, right? Mm-hmm. So we'll begin with the Parsha begins with the laws of slaves, right? This is not usual. This is the first. Oh, yeah? So this is going to be it has a lot of stuff. I'm going to try to see how much I can put in here with the time that we have and all the laws. So I might skip some things. I might go fast a little bit. I might go in my fast forward voice. It's a little bit faster than this. So bear with me. Okay, so the selling of a slave. Now, if you ever wonder, it's a question. It's like, why is this one of the first things right after we get out of Egypt? Laws of a slave. Okay, we have laws of the Beit, and then we have laws of the covenant Pesach. We have certain laws, but the Parsha Mishpatim, the first Parasha after Matan Torah, laws of slave. And the reason is because we were slaves in Egypt. God took us out of Egypt, and now we're no longer slaves. So right now, who are we? We are only loyal to God. Now, when some guy goes and he says, I want to be a slave, I want to be loyal to somebody else, you're just negating that whole situation that just happened, right? For 400 years, we were in. You ever think about it? Why did God put us in all this in this situation that we have to be slaves? And the reason is if you go to a guy who's always free, and he says, listen, okay, come here, you're going to come with my religion. And you can't do X, Y, Z, A, B, C, D, right? You can't do any of these things. You're gonna be like, go find yourself somebody else. I'm not interested in this. But if you find a guy that's subservient, that's he's already working for somebody, he's working like say, listen, you come to me, I'm gonna help you out. I'll give you a good job, a good this, but you have to do X, Y, and Z for me. The guy says, with happiness, gladness, much better than I was doing before. So we were in Egypt for 400 years, whatever, for the amount of time that we were. Depends, how you do the calculation. 210 years. We were in slave training camp. Right? We were getting taught how to be slaves. And what the thing is that now we got out of the whole mentality of being a slave. Now we have the ability to be a slave to God. And the slave is very bad. A servant is a better word. Now we can be a servant. We can be subservient to God because we know how to be subservient already. Right? So now what happens is this guy says, I want to be a slave to my master, or even if he doesn't want to, and we'll see how he gets into that situation. That's why this is the first thing right off the bat. Laws of slaves. So the laws of slaves is first of all, how does a guy become a slave? So usually, if somebody lets you steal something, the laws of theft is very different. Interesting. Maybe we should do a little comparison between Jews and non-Jews. If a non-Jew steals, you know what his punishment is? Death. Yeah, that's it. Non-Jew steals, the laws of punishment is death. I'm not mistaken.
But if the Jews, it depends where he steals from.
It depends. Yeah, there's a few things depending if it's an ox or a sheep, but in general, the general rule is he pays double.
Yeah.
He pays if he doesn't get caught. What happens is if the guy steals, right? And then he says, I feel bad. He goes in and he says, listen, I took this from you, I'm giving it back. That's it, right? If he goes and he says, I got away scot-free, and then he finds out there's video cameras are there, they catch him, they catch him, they go and he pays the value, he gives back the value, and he also pays back the value in money. So he basically pays double the value that he lost. Right? If you think about it, nowadays people that they work in, let's say the prosecutions or the prosecutor or there are certain lawyers that they go according. What happens if somebody steals in the United States? If, let's say, it's a Ponzi scheme, you can get up to 20 years in prison, 25 years in prison. I don't know what the number is, right? According to the law of the Torah, you just have to pay double. So, by you following the law of the land, it's really going against the law of the Torah. You follow what I'm saying? It become a little bit as complicated. Some things are the same, some things are different, some things are more strict, but...
So, if you do Ponzi, just pay double.
Well, no, you're not supposed to do Ponzi scheme. Not even. That's the lesson learned. So, but in any case, so if a thief goes and he stole, and now he can't pay back double. He can't. He took it, he sold it, he took an animal, he ate it, and he has no money. So what they do is that they sell him as a slave. And he goes and and it's so interesting when you look at the laws of slaves. It's so. If you look at the way that I'll present to you these things, it doesn't even make sense who would want to buy a slave. The amount how tough they make it on the owner of the slave. And I'll give you an example. First of all, when he gets sold, he has to be sold in a very dignified manner. You know, he can't like strip him down naked, show us all his muscles, and say, okay, this guy, you know, he could bench 350. You know, he could pull a nice wagon load. You know, like he could go for $5 grand or 10 grand or 15 grand. Right? It has to be in a very dignified way. But listen to how this is the laws of, by the way, Jewish slaves, Hebrew slaves. Now we're not talking about the Abed Kanani. So you're not allowed to go and give him lowly jobs. You can't tell him, okay, listen, but why don't you go do the laundry? Or what you're really supposed to do is if he was like a specialist in his field and something, then you give him that type of work. Let's say he used to know how to I don't know, work tractors, whatever in the field. So that's what you give him to do. You don't start giving him menial tasks. It says, because you're my slave, so shine my shoes and clean my, you know, I want you to crawl on the old ground when I'm here, when I'm around, right? You have a little, you want to feel powerful, because whenever you walk near me, you got to crawl, right? You can't do things like that. More than that, if you have to share food, whatever food you have to share with the other guy, with the slave. Which means is that if you eat certain type of bread, you can't give him the good bread. You can't keep the good bread for yourself and give him the bad bread. You have to give him the bad bread.
And if you don't
the good bread. If you don't have
enough, then
if you have, let's say, only one pillow, you got to give it to him. If you sleep on a real mattress, you can't give him a straw mattress.
that's why I don't understand. So I read it on Shabbat. I read that you give the pillow to the slave and you sleep without the pillow.
Yeah, that's what I said. That's what I said when I started. That doesn't make sense. Who would want to buy it says that when you buy a slave, you're really buying a master.
It's not a slave, it's like the employee of the month.
Yeah, exactly. This is how the Torah views people. Not you're not.
So what's the reason? So Jewish people will not get slaves? It's like to turn them off towards this idea?
Yeah, well, obviously we don't want any Jew to be a slave, because if a Jew is a slave, that's not a good situation to begin with. But more than that it's also a teaching opportunity for the slave. So look what the master is doing for you. Although you couldn't hold yourself back from stealing from other people, look what other people are willing to do for you.
This is only for Jewish slaves, though.
Yeah, we're talking about Jewish
Only
slave.
apply to Jewish slave.
The Jewish slave.
A Jewish owner and a Jewish slave.
Non-Jewish slave is a whole different ballgame.
But the owner also has to be Jewish.
A
master
non-Jew could own a non-Jew slave.
In this case, the master is Jewish and the slave.
Oh, you're not allowed. Yeah, you can't sell. You have to sell to a Jew. You can't sell to. So you can't sell to a non-Jew. Yeah. Yeah. So I was going to say something. Okay, well, let's see if I get that. So the additional is that a slave goes in for 6 years. After the 6 years, he goes free. There's a few ways that he could go free. Right. One of them is if the 6 years are up. If Yovel comes, which is Jubilee, which is every 50 years. And then there is, if let's say the master hits his tooth out or hits his eye out, then he could go free because of that. Right. So there's certain ways that the slave can get out earlier. Right. Or he can pay himself out. Let's say he comes home with some money.
He did?
Can he hit him back?
No, in the master.
No, it's not like him.
It's not like him.
It's not like him. No. It's a very dignified. It's a very dignified. What?
So basically all this design is to say, you know what, I'll just do things myself, I don't need a slave.
No, why? It's still free labor, you just have to take care of it.
Yeah, you have to take it, but
it's like, you know, New York standards of laws.
It's like your minimum wage is very high for slaves.
He's like part of a union, basically.
It's a very strong union.
Jewish union.
Yeah. It's more than that. It's like if he's married and he has kids, then the guy who bought it has to support the whole family.
Right. That's
going to do everything.
Does he have to teach them Torah, the kids?
That's a good question. And if he has to support him, then maybe he has the same obligations. That's a good question. I don't know.
His kids do probably, that's what it is.
It's not considered his kids, but he has to support them. If you're supporting them, is that probably he probably has to? Yeah, it's probable. So now there's an interesting if there's a guy, and most people would want to do it. If there's a guy, there's an interesting law is that if the guy comes and he's married, the master is allowed to say, here, I have a non-Jewish maid. I want you to be with her so we can have a non-Jewish maid, and we should have kids, and I can use those kids as regular slaves. So he could do that. The master is allowed to do that. Now let's say after 6 years are up, he has 3 little Mexicanos running around with him, right? And he says, listen, I don't want to go out free. I love my wife. I love my kids. I love my master. I want to stay over here, right? I want to stay a slave. It's a good life for me. I got to sleep in a nice bed. I get a nice bread. And if the master drinks wine, he can't give the slave water. He says, I got to do wine. He says, I want to stay over here. So the law is what they got to do is they got to go break him to Betin, and they put it in his ear. They put it's a malpet. They
the cows. They tag them.
They tag the. I guess that's a interesting way of tagging it. But so they make a hole in the ear. Now the question is why specifically in the ear, and why only this mitzvah? And the reason is because that's all. Yeah. If you have the ear that heard on Matan Torah that you'll be my slaves and nobody else's, and you still decided that it's better for you, you're going to be going into, we're going to put it on the ear. Why also on the doorpost? Because on the doorpost is where we put the blood by Korban Pesach. Pesach says that's where we're going to, I took you for a nation, leave the law and not for anybody else. Because of that, now you're not listening. You want to be in somebody else, you're going to get the ear that didn't hear on the doorpost. That it's what it says specifically regarding me and not that. Then the Parsha also speaks about the laws of a maidservant, of a female servant. It's very different, and she doesn't get. It's not the same as if she, let's say, steals. And it's if the father doesn't have any money and he wants to give, so he can sell her for, while she's younger, until up to she gets the age of puberty, which I think is about 11 and a half. So, and then also the same rules apply. She gets freed by 6 years, but there's a lot more different rules incumbent upon it. That if someone buys it, it's actually beneficial for that person to go and marry that, or for his son, like set him up for a son that they should get married, or the laws for a female slave is a much more, even higher, more intense than a man.
Those laws are considered part of the 613, or?
So there's the laws of slaves. Yeah, it's part of the 613.
Okay, but let's say the laws of slaves is the laws that if you punch a slave in the eye, you have to let him go. That's one law. That's considered one of the 613, or like group of laws.
I understand what I'm saying. Some of them are under a group or category, and some of them are specifically. So we're talking about like 53 mitzvot in this week's parasha. So some of them are the 53 are all ones, but then there's always subcategories. For example, stealing, right? There's so many different subcategories on how to steal and is this considered stealing?
Okay, so slavery is one law, but everything else is subcategory.
So it depends. Oh no, so I have to actually look into there's something called the Sefer Chinuch, which lists all the mitzvot. I was thinking we should do that way. We should do the parasha with all the mitzvot in the Torah. But that's more, it's a different style than I've been doing it till now. It's more information style, and some of these things are not gonna, like kalbanot, so we could do that if you guys are interested in that. The list of all the mitzvot in each parasha. You like that?
It's a better,
No, I don't mind,
in my opinion, it's a better way of, that way actually what is
Right.
the part of those.
Right. So I was actually considering that for a while, and I was thinking about that. This week's parasha would have been, a nice long hour and a half of going doing that.
Now,
Yeah, I'm
so
having
the
another
question is, a lot of people are proud to think that they do all the mitzvot, all the 613 of them. But the more I listen to this, a lot of them don't even apply this.
Most of them don't apply. Forget about a lot. Most of them
So
don't
what is
apply.
a big deal?
Yeah.
So 600.
If you calculate how many mitzvot we're able to do nowadays, the number is very small. Most of the mitzvot are korbanot, a Beit HaMikdash. You have the laws of Eretz Yisrael. You have laws of Kohanim. What do we have? Laws of. We don't have that. We don't. I mean, we have Kohanim. I'm saying we don't have the laws of the Beit HaMikdash. So a lot of laws we don't. Doesn't come into effect actually. So we say 613. We have so many, but push comes to shove, we're not doing 613. And nowadays.
Right, slave doesn't apply to them.
No.
We're not allowed to have a slave.
There's the laws of the land also. You have to follow the laws of the land. You can't do. I don't know.
I guess by Jewish law, that doesn't say you're not allowed. You can have, but it's just the laws of the land that the society believes in.
Yeah, we have to follow the laws, and you can't decide that you're, dealing. America. You're going to start a new little, section in Brooklyn.
What if I live in Africa and it's allowed and I can have a slave?
So a Jewish slave?
Then you
can have a non-Jewish slave. You can have if they allow it over there. There are many people that have.
About Jewish slave.
Then you follow the laws. That's right.
Jewish slave I think is more problematic. I don't know if you can have a Jewish slave from now. You might. I don't know. It's a good
It's like
question.
having multiple wives. But they might not allow it.
It's not the same as this. I have to look it up all the details in it. It's not as intense as this. I don't think it goes out. Unless it buys out, unless there's whatever the term of the contract is also.
There's a contract.
When you buy a slave, you're buying it from someone. So what, okay. So
this is right after the Tantorah.
This is right after, yeah. Right after
this. We never went to Golden Calf. That was
we didn't do that yet. We didn't get up to that yet.
But the Tantorah, when was that? The time not an order, no?
Well, no, we didn't get to the sin of Golden Calf.
No, but isn't the sin of Golden Calf after the Tantorah? I mean,
no, we got the Luchot again. We got the Luchot again.
So the Luchot were given, but not Matan Torah. So the Luchot.
No, this is part of the Matan Torah. So what happens is this Parsha is like in the middle.
Getting ready for it.
It's Matan Torah. At the end of this Parsha, Moshe goes up to Shemayim for 40 days and 40 nights.
Is it in order though?
The Parsha?
Yeah.
It's a good question. If it's there's machloket. Some people say it was
I
written.
mean, how are they learning this if the Torah wasn't given yet? I don't understand.
The Torah, this part was given. The Ten Commandments was given already.
But this is not part of the Ten Commandments.
This is in addition. I think the Ramban, I believe, says that all these are derivatives from the Ten Commandments. I think it was the Ramban. The Ten Commandments are all given already. Last week's Parasha Yisrael was
He said he went up to get the Luchos.
yeah, but now he's going to go up again for 40 days and 40 nights to learn the rest of the Torah. It says furthermore.
Have they been to Mount Sinai yet?
Yes, yeah.
So he went the first time.
The
first 40 days he's been or no?
No, right now, no, right.
This is
gonna
right
be-
before
yeah,
it goes up.
Yeah.
So they get to the mountain, they're at the bottom.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the second time is right before Yom Kippur. So I think I follow the confusion.
Я думал, первый раз он 40 дней там
Not yet, that didn't happen yet. The exile didn't happen.
Второй раз, когда он ушел, они думали, что он там умер,
Before or after?
и построили
Да,
храм,
да.
да.
Because
Второй раз.
After. No, not seven Mishpat is going to be later. It's very confusing. It's very confusing. Now seven Mishpat comes in this week's Parsha, but Matan Torah was happened already. So the question is the Torah chronological or not? It's actually interesting. It says that until now in this part of the story in the actual time that it's happening, Moshe wrote the Torah until Parsha Tuesdays, this week's Parsha. So there are people that says that it was written chronologically, and there are people that says that it was not written chronologically.
Okay.
But generally speaking, it does make sense chronologically. There is
So at this point, if we go by this, and the Torah was already given, technically.
the Ten
But
Commandments
it's
was
only
given.
mentioned later, though.
The Ten Commandments was already given.
Okay, but slavery is not part of the Ten Commandments, though.
No, but I'm saying so the whole Torah was given. It was a process. It wasn't just an injection of the Torah, right? It wasn't just like here it is. It was taught. It wasn't just like God like smashed it in his brain. Like,
So
here.
he received.
Well, actually, it might be technically.
He
like
received
that.
parts, and he received it in parts. Then he got a revelation for this, for these halachot.
So that's
and
why,
he got
yeah.
another
So that's
for
why
this
the
section of halachot.
Right. So that's why I think if I'm not mistaken, the Rambam he says that all these laws in here are derivatives that we could learn from the Ten Commandments. That we could. How do you pick slavery from that? Because you could derive. I don't know if this is how he does it, but if I would think about it, you could say, listen, someone didn't steal. Now what he has money. Now what he's going to do with it?
It's all part of those halachot, the stealing.
I think the Ramban says that.
But the Torah was not given it. I mean,
The
the
five
Ten
books of
Commandments.
Moses. This full complete book was not. We didn't complete it yet. No.
Well, when the golden calf happened, right? When that whole series happened, what was he going up to get? He went to the mount. What was he going to get?
He was going to get the first. The actual luchot.
the Ten Commandments were said, but they weren't written down.
The time wasn't brought down yet, right?
So when he went the first time, what was the purpose of that?
He didn't go up the first time yet.
Well, he got the Ten Commandments from before.
He went up to the mountains and they saw and they heard God speaking to Moses and they heard
Given the Ten
God.
Commandments. But it wasn't the actual luchot. It wasn't the actual time.
Right. That's gonna come afterwards. And the first one gets broken
So
when he comes down.
they get out of Egypt. Once they get out of Egypt, how much time till they got to Mount Sinai?
So they went out of I want to say from Pesach to Shavuot was technically a little bit more than 40 days I think it is. But I think I'm mistaken with that.
It's 49 days, no?
So
I think I'm mistaken with that. I want to say 40 days, but I think I'm mistaken with that.
So it was a
number.
few weeks.
It wasn't a lot. For some reason, I'm
Did
thinking
they keep
60.
Shabbat? No. There was
Shabbat was given. Shabbat was
I
given.
mean, there was
But they
no.
weren't keeping it.
Shabbat
Time was a month, it was
given
Shabbat already.
with manna.
Yeah, Shabbat was already given.
Shabbat was given.
Shabbat was given.
But Shabbat was different. They didn't have the laws yet, and they were just. Doesn't Shabbat come from the laws?
Mishkan. Yeah, so they had. They didn't. Also, they weren't working back then. They weren't working back then.
This is up тоже Shabbat.
There was no Maserati to drive.
There's nothing there. Yeah,
Yeah,
they weren't working
to drive.
on Shabbat over there. There was nothing to do. They had everything given to them. The clothes were given. They didn't have to do laundry. They didn't have to do anything.
The clothes was growing with
The
them.
man.
What?
And also by the month, what were they doing? What were they doing all the time? They're also learning Torah. So what Torah did they get? Where did they get all these laws from?
But they had not written, they had
Oral. So it's a good question of what laws they had when, and what
So basically, they spent a few weeks.
They already
traveling to
got-
Mount Sinai.
right after
Right.
the yeah, okay, go ahead.
They're learning. They get to Mount Sinai. Hashem
Commandments.
speaks to them. They get scared, and then they tell Moses to go up themselves, and that's the order.
and then comes this, and then this Parsha we're going to learn about the laws of certain things, and then Moshe goes up to the mountains God goes up to heaven to the mountain for 40 days and 40 nights.
So this parsha is right after.
It's like a extended version of the Matan Torah. It's like a lot of information, a lot of things that happen during that span of time.
Okay. But it's right at the point where it's after Na'aseh V'Nishma. It's before Na'aseh V'Nishma, but it's after Hashem put the mountain over the Jews.
So
this parsha.
putting the mountain over the Jews, that's a midrash. That's not in the exactly in the.
Okay.
Yeah. That's also very interesting. I hear it's. I hear what you're saying. Now that you're presenting it, I can hear where all the confusion is chronologically.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah. So okay. It is.
No,
Well, I'll tell you like this.
How you put it right in, you put it right in the chronological order.
Yeah, you did a good job in it. But
Put
forget
it
about the
in
chronological for now. Once you have the whole
That's
picture,
all.
it's easy. Well, maybe at the end of this whole scenario, we'll put it all in a chronological order. After we have all the information, we'll say X, Y, and Z, and this happened. But for right now, this is just the laws.
Mhm.
The laws that are presented. When and how, not how, but when they were presented, they were, and how did it make sense if we didn't get the Torah yet? How do we have all these things yet? And again, we had also Brit Milah, we had Korban Pesach, which is also the laws of the Torah. Oh wow, okay. I didn't realize how late it is, and we didn't even start the. We've got 1 out of 53. Okay, so let me go through it a little bit faster. Okay, so the Torah then goes on to speak about laws of there's some laws of capital punishment also. Like for example, murder. If somebody murdered somebody by accident, then there's for example, let's say he's chopping a tree with an axe, and he chops it, and the axe detaches from the wood, and it goes falls and it chops the guy's head off. Right, so that guy, he did it by accident. What he has to do now is he has to run to it's called the city of refuge. There's a certain city of refuge, and in there he's safe. Like the family member can go and avenge his blood. If he's not in that city of refuge, again, this is a whole topic in itself to just explain it. Just bear with me because we're trying to go just plow through it. So, if he's not in the city, if he's in the city of refuge, he's safe. If he's not in the city of refuge, the family could revenge his blood of the guy that did it, that killed him. Now, if let's say somebody did it.
Don't they have to go to bed?
Yeah, but I'm saying this is but it's sort of like a race against the clock of who can get to the enemy clock first. It's a whole long topic in itself.
How is he supposed to know what those in anyway?
It's a video camera, whatever the people saw or whatever it was. Lots of people saw, right? People saw, and then he knew that it was, or even he could have said, "Listen, I did it by accident." He confessed and says, "Now I'm," and he goes and he runs to the enemy clock. But premeditated murder, right? Murder that somebody says, and he goes premeditated murder in the Torah means that you have a guy that says, "I'm going to murder this guy," or he doesn't have to say it, and there's 2 witnesses that warn him and said, "Don't murder him." And he says, "No, I don't care. I'm going to murder him anyways. I don't like the way he looks." Right? And he goes and he puts a gun and shoots the guy in the face in front of 2 witnesses. Right? The 2 witnesses come and testify against that person. That person is liable to capital punishment.
What if the guy that managed on still gonna do it because he's still gonna punch him?
If he just, you're saying that if they warn him and he just ignores him, it's a good question. Because the question is did he get really warned? He's only.
Yeah, because he might have said, "Oh."
He might have said, "Oh, I didn't hear." Yeah, I didn't hear. Possibly not. The way that the Torah works is so strict. In order to get capital punishment, it has so many things that have to fall into place. I'll tell you more than that. If let's say some guy goes and the way that it works in the court of law in America is you have to. It's beyond any reasonable. What is the words?
Reasonable doubt.
Beyond any reasonable doubt, which means is pretty likely that you did it. Beyond any reasonable doubt, which means is it could be a little bit of doubt. In the Torah, there's no such thing as doubt. It has to be 100% definite that you did it. If we're not 100% sure, then we don't give you the death penalty. More than that, if let's say some guy goes and they say, okay, he really deserves to get killed. And then he goes and they lead him to the gallows, although it wasn't gallows, so they lead him to whatever the death penalty that he was supposed to go. And then he goes, I remembered, I have a case that could defend it. They go and they reopen this case up. And it could be 1,000 times, that he could do it. They're not going to do it until everything is 100%. If some guy wakes up and be like, oh wait, I might have something that could acquit this guy. So they say, okay, let's open the case and they bring him back down. Because this is how careful they were with life. Not like, Texas, whatever. A guy, whatever. Okay, that's a good thing. Okay, anyways. So that's murder. The next thing is also, there's also capital punishment for cursing parents. Cursing parents, or if let's say you give somebody hits the parents and it causes blood to come out. It's also capital punishment. The next thing is different types of punishments. For this is why I'm saying it's heavy. You see how these laws are just they're not the regular stuff that until now Parasha was a lot of history. Well, it wasn't really history, but it was a lot of stories of what was going. Now it's like it gets a little heavy in this week's Parasha. So bear with me. There's a lot of things that we could say about this, but I didn't realize how late it is. So we'll do maybe 5 or 10 more minutes, and whatever we get up to, and the rest I'll just tell you outside what laws it speaks about. So the next thing speaks about types of damages, which means if somebody goes and damages somebody else, he beats him up and he causes him to lose work, lose job, has medical bills, and all those things. So what does this guy have to pay now? Right? The law, according to the law, there's 5 things that a person has to pay. Number 1 is nezek, which means this guy is worth, let's say, X amount of money had he been sold as a slave at this state in life. Now you did all these things to him, you broke his arm, now he hurt his back, now he has arthritis, now he has this, and yada, yada, yada. So his value goes down. You got to pay him that value.
The value that's
The difference that you made lost. That's nezek. That's one payment they have to do. Number 2 is tzar. The amount that he suffered through the loss of the limb or the injury or whatever it is, you have to pay for that. And obviously Betin calculates that amount. Number 3 is, and I hope if I'm going too fast for you guys. Number 3 is ripoy, which is damages of medical bills. You have to pay for all the medical bills. You made him break his arm, now he's got to go to the hospital. You pay everything. And number 4 is any sheves, is any financial loss that was. Let's say the guy now had to be in the hospital for 4 months and he couldn't work, so now he's out of a job for 4 months. You got to pay him that. And the last thing was 5 is boshes was embarrassment. Now he's got to work with a cast, or now he can't do this. Now he's not. He's always so they calculate all these things. It's a nice fat lump sum that that this guy who beat him up, whatever injury cost, has to give it to him. Okay. Then it speaks about also laws of theft. Right? If you steal something that we said, and we mentioned this earlier, is that you have to pay double. Now, what happens if you steal? There's a difference that if you steal a sheep or an ox, right? Which I think you mentioned earlier, right? The Torah puts look how sensitive the Torah is. 4 or 5 times. If you steal an ox, you have to pay 5 times the amount of the ox, right? And again, there's obviously there's a lot of laws that are coming into play with this, and we can't go into detail because we don't have the time to get into that. But the general rule is you pay 5 times. Now why? And if you steal a sheep, it's 4 times. Now what's the difference? Why here 5 and why here 4? It doesn't make any sense. Number 1, 5 times is because the ox is worth more to the owner than the sheep, because the ox could also plow, it could also do things. And number 2, the sheep. How do you steal a sheep? I once seen somebody that there was a guy that was videoing from a video camera from a car. It looked like some sort of Arab thing, and there was he was videoing a car in front of it. And the way that he did it was he drove. There was like a herd of sheep. And they opened the door, they grabbed 2 sheep by the back of the leg, and they chucked it in the car, and they zoomed off. Right, so they stole a sheep like that. So a sheep, sometimes you can't just lead it away. It's not going to listen to you. Sometimes you have to actually pick it up. You have to put it on your shoulders, and you have to walk it out. So you pay. God says we're going to only make this guy pay 4 times because he had to suffer embarrassment to steal that sheep. He had to put it on his back, and he has to, as opposed to an ox, you just let it out, and the ox just followed you wherever he went. Look how sensitive the Torah is, even to the thief. We're going to say, okay, now this guy suffered a little bit. We're going to make his burden a little lighter.
Just one little thing, because there is a mitzvah, right? If I'm not mistaken, mitzvah to return something that was stolen.
Yeah.
So how can you do mitzvah of returning something stolen if you don't steal it? Like it's a contradiction,
So there's always going to be somebody who's going to give you the opportunity. Hopefully not. But yeah.
What if you steal something that's not in use? Like it's not in use, it's just there.
Yeah, it's a loss to the other person.
What if the person doesn't care about it? It's like it's useless to them, or you just steal it?
It really depends. So it depends on it's a very vague term. So sometimes it can be useful to them, but they want it in their apartment. If they say, listen, I don't care about this, take whatever you want and go, then you give you permission. Yeah, but
they hint to it, for example.
I don't know. It still would have like a taste, a flavor of stealing. A person should never get himself into that mode of that type of person to be also. The guy would, what I'm saying, right? Like, there's a reason why there's if you have two options, I think we said this before, if you have options to give, you have $100, you can give $1 to 100 people, or $100 to one guy. It's better to give $1 to 100 people, even though this one guy, he would actually do much more with the money, because what are you going to do with $1? So, but the point is that you become a giving person. You become that type of person that you just want to give money. So it changes your character trait. If you're starting to say like, okay, he probably doesn't want it, he probably doesn't need it, let me just take it, and you take it, that's good, so you become that type of person. This is more not like strict law, but more like hashkafa, like moral, ethical values and how you perceive yourself. Okay. Oh, it's a shame I want to speak about witchcraft. Okay, so there's a law that we're not allowed to keep the witches alive. right? And it's not only, it says witches because witches were the ones who used to practice witchcraft were usually women, but it's wizards or witchcraft or witches as well. You're not allowed to practice wizardry, I don't know if that's a word, but you're not allowed to practice magic according to the Jewish law, right? You're not allowed to do it, right? I don't think there's any magic schools, Hogwarts is out of business. But you're not allowed to do it. And when the Jews ruled the land, there would be an obligation that you'd have to kill the witches. You have to, it's not something that the Christians
believed in witches and magic at that time.
Yeah. Obviously, it's a question on the Rambam. So there are, I think Rabbi Yehoshua Zitron answers it. Because Maimonides says there's no such thing as magic. It's only a thing of the eye. But there's ways to answer it. There's Rabbi Yehoshua Zitron, he answers it. It says whatever. It's when we do a topic of demons, that's what I speak about. If we do that topic, if we ever get to, we have so many topics lined up already. Okay. But there is it's a shame. I wanted to say a nice, interesting story about the witches, but okay, let's move on. There's because it's getting late, and I want to at least we have to touch a little bit about soulmates, about reincarnation. So then it goes. The Torah goes against. There's a prohibition specifically on inflicting a widow or an orphan. Right, and it's interesting. I think Rabbi Friend he brings it down. It's not only people think the widow or the orphan. It's any sensitive person. It's a guy that if you hurt him a little bit, he cries or she cries or is very sensitive and in a very sensitive state of mind or emotionally unstable. You have to be careful of those type of people. Why specifically widows and orphans the Torah brings down is because they have no one to cry to. They can't go to their dad. Dad, someone just beat me up in school. Because no one was going to do anything about it. Nobody. So they were easy prey. So God says they're not, they don't have anybody to cry to, but when they cry to me, trust me, I'm going to listen. When the sensitive person cries, that's when I'm going to listen. I have to tell you a short story on this because this is very important. Let's see how much I've done this. Okay, so always stress for time. We have to set up a class that's just 3 hours. Okay, we can't
start a little earlier.
Yeah. So there was once there's an interesting Gemara that says that there was a widow that came into the Beit Midrash and she was asking for something, and there was a guy learning with his rabbi, and the rabbi ignored this woman. So the student goes over to the rabbi and says, Rabbi, why don't you listen to the widow? Don't you know what it says about widows and all those things? She says it's not my responsibility. It's the responsibility of the main guy, the main rabbi over here. I'm just So the Gemara then it didn't. That's how the Gemara ends. Then there's another Gemara that speaks about that there was a guy that had a near-death experience, right? You know near-death experience? The guy dies, come back alive. We think it's all this new thing. There's a story in the Gemara about it. That a guy went up to the next world and he came back down. And what did he say? He said what he saw there, saw the opposite world. He saw a world where people were low over here were very high up there. And people that were high in this world were low in the next world. So the Gemara brings down that it's talking about this rabbi and the student.
Spiritually, high and low.
Right, it doesn't say. It's just as high. It does as high and low. There's a lot. The Gemara is so secret. There's so many layers to it that
So
you can.
if you study a lot here, you're not going to be there.
No, it's talking about. Let's say some guy is a multi-billionaire, right? He has real estate. He has everything going for him. He has yachts and everything, but he doesn't do a squat of mitzvah. Right? He does nothing. Right? So what is he going to be in the next world? This million's not going to do anything for him. So that's an easy example to explain it, as opposed to somebody who has nothing, right? It's a shame. You look at people that go and they sit all learn and they learn a lot, right? And they drive this car from the 1950s is probably worth money. Let's say the 1980s, right? And this car that's with duct tape all over the place, and they can barely go to these things. And you look at this guy, oh man, what a lazy guy. And all day he sits and learns. And you look very lowly on these type of people. Meanwhile, those type of people, the Torah says, no, these are the people that are going to be very, very high in the next world. And you look at all the billionaires that waste their time and then they're going to be in the bottom. Obviously, there are people that have money and they do good also. And there are people that don't have money and do bad also. So obviously, it's all in perspective. It depends what the scenario is. But the point is that he said a very a broad statement. The people low on this world are very high in the next world. People high in the next world are very low in this world. Now, I think the Tosfos says that he brings down that it's talking about this rabbi and this student. It says this rabbi and this student, they were. He mentioned his rabbi 500 times or so, a crazy amount of times in the Talmud, in the Gemara. So why? And now it says that no, now he is greater. The low one is greater than the higher one. It's referring to this case. It says what? Because of this scenario, what happened? So he brings down a very interesting story from the Holocaust. So there was once a guy that came out of the Holocaust and he just lost it with religion. He's like, if this is God, I don't want anything to do with it. Look, how could he do that? I lost my family, I lost everything, and he took it really, really hard. And he had all his friends that were trying to convince him, hey, listen, buddy, God has a plan, God has this. You know, I just came from from paying a respect for a shiva house. You guys know what a shiva house called is? It's like when, what is it called in?
Когда человек умирает, so
What is it called?
7 days.
Paminki.
We understand 7 days.
They were saying what word do you use?
English or Russian?
Parminkis?
Rabbi
Huh?
Belsis?
Parvesis?
No, Rabbi Belsis?
Oh, no, Rabbi Belsky. Oh, I thought you were saying a Russian thing. No, it was my next door, my parents' next door neighbor. So, but the people there, they say sometimes things that are insensitive. I sat next to a guy that couldn't stop talking. And I find it amusing and a little bit, thank God he was pretty good though. He was good. He knew the family, so it's good. But sometimes you sit around these people and they just say things that you're not supposed to say. There's certain things that you don't say. Like, God has a plan for everything. Yes, God has a plan, but let that come out from their mouths. It depends on how it comes out. So there are certain people that you have to be careful what you say in those types of situations. The best thing is to just be quiet. It's very hard for me to bite my tongue. I just talk a lot. But in any case, everybody was trying to convince him, hey, listen, God has a plan, God has a reason for everything, this happened, we don't know what it is, but you got to be strong in religion, you got to be strong in God. This has nothing to do it. They said, okay, fine, try to bring you to a rabbi. He wouldn't do nothing. Finally, they were able to convince him to go to it was the Klosenberger Rebbe. It was a big Hasidic Rebbe. If I'm not mistaken, he lost 10 kids in the Holocaust. He had 10 children, he lost them all. If I'm not mistaken. He went into the room, and he came out an hour later with kippah and tzitzit. So the guys were like, oh, you got to tell us what happened over here. We're like, what did the rabbi do for an hour with you? That you came, he was so anti that, and he finally got him to do it, and not only did he agree, he came out with already a kippah and tzitzit on. So the guy said, listen, I went over to the rabbi, and I started saying, Rabbi, I lost so much in the Holocaust. And it says, once I started speaking to the rabbi, my eyes swelled up, and I started crying. And the rabbi took my hand, and he started crying with me. And he says, I know how hard it is, I lost 10 kids. And so we cried together for 1 hour. And then he says, finally I found somebody that's able to hear me for what my problems are. I was able to move on and accept God for what happened. So sometimes we think about it and we say, it's not what you say, what you do, it's what you listen with. He says there's a widow and there's an orphan, right? You have to be careful with them. You don't know what's going to hurt them and what's going to make them, and you don't know what a lending ear is going to do. This is why specifically the Torah says you're not allowed to harm even minute, a widow and an orphan. It also speaks about converts. These are old people that have nowhere else to go to. People that have nothing else to stick up for them. Okay. We're going to have to finish now because we have to start reincarnation because I have another class. Then it goes, so I'm going to tell you just some basic topics, what it goes, and maybe if we start a little bit earlier next week, I'll catch up on these things. There's laws about judges and witnesses. How a judge is not allowed to take a bribe, and how is supposed to judge the court case. You have to have both witnesses present at the same time. There's a whole bunch of laws on
Judges can't have bribes?
Bribes.
Oh.
What is it, bribe?
Yeah,
bribes. Yeah. Then there's also things about laws of lying. Not a lie and what things like that, and how careful a judge has to be for incurring the death penalty. Then the Torah speaks about the 4 types of capital punishment. Right? All right. 4 types of capital punishment, and it goes through each one, right? And burning. There's a few. We don't have time to go through it. Okay. There is then the prohibition of eating meat and milk in this week's Parsha. You're not allowed to eat meat and milk together. And the Parsha that goes on speaks about, there's actually other laws about the different, if you give your property to somebody to watch, or you give some of your property to somebody to borrow, what he's reliable, what he's liable to pay. There is Gemarot written on this week's Parsha. This Parsha is so full of information that you can speak so much about. There's just so much laws. It's a lot of that type of information. And there's also laws that what happens if your ox scores this. If you dig a pit and it's certain, and somebody falls in it. If it's certain height, then you have to pay for it. If it's not a certain height, then they don't die. There's all these different laws. If you start a fire, and because of that fire, it goes and damages other things, and you have to pay for that. And then the Parsha finishes about, that the Parsha ends that God says to Moshe, after he says it, when the Jews are going to sin, if they're going to sin with a calf, I'm not going to lead them anymore. It's going to be an angel, and it goes back and forth. And then the Parsha ends with Moses going up to heaven for 40 days and 40 nights without eating or drinking. That's the Parsha. Okay, so I know I'm going to actually put a little note that if we have time next week to go a little bit earlier, like maybe another 15 or 20 minutes, we'll start with put in some laws on that we skip. But let's speak a little bit about the last few minutes we have to speak a little bit about reincarnation, because that is the topic that we were supposed to speak about. So now that means that we're going to just probably extend it another week, because I'm not going to be able to finish it by next week, most likely. So the topic that I said that we're going to speak about was soulmates. Now, that is a little bit of a misleading topic, because soulmates we're going to speak about soulmates, but soulmates in itself is a tremendous topic in itself. There's so many different variants and variables that go into what a soulmate is and how it works and how it, for the little knowledge that I know, I have a lot of information to give over. But we're going to speak about it slowly on the topic of reincarnation. Now, originally there was if you can think about it as one soul, that one soul went and it's split into two, a male and a female part. And now that part goes down into the male, and that goes down to the female, and then when they get married, they reunite that. And I think the Baal Shem Tov said that there is this pillar of light. That when you have those soulmates adjoining, you have this pillar, this spiritual light just shine much brighter, right? What that means, beyond my capability of understanding, but I'm just relaying over the information to you. So the interesting part, I'll tell you, I find the best things sometimes to explain something is through stories. But just to understand the concept of it is that somebody could mess up, and this is a topic that it's another series of marriage regarding to soulmates. A person can mess up and not marry a soulmate. A person could go and marry the wrong soulmate. A person could marry the right soulmate, get divorced, and then due to whatever, because there's so many different things that if you're destined to one person, the Torah says also you get a wife according to your deeds. So then there's a lot of things there's a lot of variables that come into play over here. But we're speaking in a very generalized manner, that there was one soul split into two, and it came down into two things. Now, it's also interesting with the term soulmate. People think it's like my other half. It could be your other half for a correction, which means it could be your soulmate to just correct something over here. It doesn't mean that it's your actual other half of your soul. You understand what I'm saying? It could be that because with the way that we explain reincarnation is that something happened that we messed up that we have to come back again to fix. So something could have happened that you messed up, and then you have to come back with this person, and then you fix it together.
So that person will help you to fix it, or you help that
exactly,
person.
and that's called technically a soulmate. Yeah.
Is that tshuva?
It's more like a tikkun than tshuva. Tshuva is a tikkun is here's an example. If somebody goes and steals this, right? So I have this in my pocket. I say, hey, listen, I took this tea bag, and I'm really sorry. Please forgive me. I'm never going to do it again. And you go through this, and I start crying. This tea bag, and you could go on and on and on about this tea bag, but you still have it in your pocket. So you apologize. You did the tshuva, but I still have it. The tikkun is, and now I'm giving it back to you. That's the correction of it.
What do you get? I'm saying.
You get.
Do you get the reward in the next world?
You get so it's the other way around. You're paying back debt more. So you get
to be able to get your portion.
Yeah. An example is let's say somebody.
How do they choose? How does Hashem choose? Is it everybody, or does Hashem choose who gets to do?
Who gets to come back to reincarnation? Yeah. It's you gotta It's not you don't have usually you don't have a choice.
No, I'm saying the other way around. You prefer it.
Not necessarily. A lot of people prefer hell. Because coming back to this world is opening up a can of worms. You can do good, you can fix it, but then you can mess up, you can get yourself in a much deeper hole than you were before. And people in the next world know how tough this world is and be like, maybe it's not worth it. Let's just, so it depends. Some things like money, you get forced back down. They force you back down and say, listen, you gotta go, you pay this guy back. You stole money from him, you gotta go pay him back. We said a story, we don't have time to say that story again, maybe next time if I remember I'll say a story about there's money going back and forth. Maybe I did say it here. But the general rule is it is like a tikkun. It's a tikkun to come. There is ways that some people could come back just to help other people. But you know what it is? It's like, you're going to, let's say you're going to a forest to collect some wood for firewood. You're ready over there already. You might as well pick up some berries, some cherries, some fruit, some bananas, all these. Well, I don't know, now you're going to jungle. Whatever it is, right? So you're picking up all these things. You're collecting extra tokens on the way. So coming into this world is, you're coming here, you do that. You can also collect extra things on the way. There's also something very interesting on reincarnation, which we're not going to speak about now. This is like the more advanced part of the reincarnation, is that you have to come back if you didn't learn all the Torah, and a person has to be complete. Somebody can do all the mitzvot, learn specific stuff. If one guy big tzaddik only learned halakha, never learned Kabbalah, sometimes it says he has to come back to learn halakha. This is what the Arizal said on Ruchaim Beital. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that. It was one of the biggest Kabbalists. So it's a whole a thing in itself. But in any case, the soulmate. So I'll give you an example. I'll give you an example of what it says, like of fixing something. So there was once a guy that had a very hard time with his marriage, and he wanted to get a divorce. And he goes over to the rabbi. The rabbi was the starter of Chabad, of Shnei Zaman of Ladai, right? So he goes over to the rabbi and says, Rabbi, listen, I'm considering getting a divorce. I really can't. She's such a nag. I can't deal with her. I'm just asking, for what should I do? So he goes and he thinks and he starts meditating. Now, the way this is for people not don't understanding the stories of the Hasidic masters, the way that they would be able to, I don't think there's anybody nowadays that could do it. At least not that I have heard of, because if it was, I would be at his door. Okay, they were able to go into this meditative state and go into in a spiritual realm and see things that we can't see. They could go and they could see past reincarnations. Right? Not as a general rule. I have to tell you a story probably next week about a guy, a rabbi, that he got a blessing of seeing all the reincarnations, and then he asked the blessing to get away. Stay tuned. Right? Preview for what happens next. It's a really really interesting story. But the point is he was able to go and see what happened. So he goes into this meditative state, and he comes back and he says, and by the way, meditation is a very Jewish thing. People think meditation is not. We should also do one series on meditation. Meditation is a very, very Jewish thing. And prayer, in fact, is meditation. Is blindness, right? So he would go into this meditative state, go into this spiritual, however you want to explain it. And after a few minutes, he came back, and then he started sighing. So he says, Rabbi, what's up? So he says, so as the rabbi starts explaining, he says, sometimes people sin, and when they sin, they have to get a kapara, they have to get atonement. But sometimes, so let's say somebody sinned with idol worship, so they would have to come back to get atoned for that atonement, whatever it is, whatever the atonement is going to be. So, but what happens if somebody sins so many times that he doesn't have enough? There's not enough reincarnation cycles before Mashiach comes that he can fix himself. So he says you're aware that idol worship occurs a very big penalty. The guy says yeah. So he says in many I guess a lifetime ago, says you were very big into idol worship, and you incurred a lot of debt, and now there wouldn't be enough time to fix it before Mashiach comes. So God says God sent you a bitter wife. As it says, a bitter wife is worse than death. So he says every time that your wife gets so much on your nerves and so bad at you, all you got to think about is one less death. So the guy says, Rabbi, thank you very much, and he walks out. Then he comes home. And his wife starts nagging at him. He's like, come on, you're not working. You're always going yada yada yada. Speaking, like a crazy woman. And then finally, he gets up to that boiling point. He calms himself down. He's like, he whispers to himself, one less death. And then all of a sudden he gets relaxed. And she's like, okay, something's weird over here. She puts it on the side. The next time, right? She puts out a fuss. Again, his blood pressure goes up. He calms himself down, one less death. And he hears him muttering under his breath things. And she says, listen, what are you talking under your breath for? So he's like, what's your business? Let me talk whatever I want under my breath. You just give it, you do whatever you want. And she got them pressuring him and says, listen, no, tell me really what's going on. So he told her, he says, listen, I went to the rabbi and I said, and he says, I have a lot of debt, so I accept all your pain and love. So she also respected the rabbi a lot. And she says, if that's the truth, then I don't want to be a part of. I don't want to be, I don't want to be the one, incurring this removing of the death penalty on you. Says, and from that on, they had actually a very blissful marriage. They had a very good marriage. But here we see, like, sometimes, not that everybody who has a bad marriage should say, okay, no, you shouldn't, get divorced. There is a reason for divorce, but there's a whole lecture I have for divorce also. Divorce, why there's no bracha on divorce? Do you ever think about that? It's a mitzvah to get the get, right? It's in the Torah. Why is there no bracha? Why don't you say Baruch Atah Hashem Elokeinu, whatever it is? It says, I forgot which rabbi says, because most times divorce is a sin. Most times you could have gotten out. You could have worked it out somehow. People get but there are cases that it's just not compatible. It's just not going to work, and those are the cases that the Torah says. So the point is that God put you in a certain situation. Not that a person should suffer, and not that a person should be unhappy and miserable in that. That's what I'm saying. It's a long class in just explaining the whole system of divorce and how it goes. Especially nowadays. Nowadays you have there's divorce is rampant. It's what is it, more than 50% in the religious, forget about the secular thing. It's crazy high. So there's obviously, and the rabbis are all standing behind it and they agree to it. So there's obviously a very strong foundation of it, but we have to understand what's God sent you this match, and either something went wrong or it was a wrong match or whatever it was, but there was something that wasn't connecting.
I know religion was divorced 5 times.
Yeah, I have tried. There are people that are divorced 4 times easy, like without it's, what do people usually think? Whatever, I don't want to get into divorce, it's going to take a long time. But, okay, the point is that here we see that this soulmate, came up and it was, was it the right soulmate? Was it there the other half? Or was it just there to fix it? Right, so something we don't know. So, a few more minutes and we're going to be done because I got to run to the other class. But, what? Usually they do. When I'm coming from here, usually. So, there was one other thing that I wanted to just discuss on regarding the soulmate is when a person, I'll tell you this interesting story. There was once a guy who had a very, very severe hunchback. He had a very bad deformity in his back. The way the story goes, it doesn't say hunchback. I don't think they had the terminology back then, but it had a very, very deformed back. From the way that it sounded like a hunchback. And obviously, no girl wanted to date him. And there was one righteous girl, very good girl, very righteous, pretty girl. She had things going for her, and she felt really bad for this guy. And she said, I'll date him. And she goes and they start dating, and it was very, very difficult for her. But she tried to look past his hump, and he was, says, he had a good personality, and she kept on pushing that thing behind that. And eventually she was like, I'm going to get married to him. No one's ever get married to him. I want to get married to him. And she goes and she gets married, and they get married. And then at the time of the wedding, at the wedding night, after the wedding, he takes off his shirt and she sees this hump with veins, and she's like gagging, throwing up, and she's like, I can't do this, and she runs out. And she says, I need a divorce. I thought I could do this, I can't. And she goes to the rabbi, and she says, Rabbi, I really tried. I really wanted to do something good. I really thought I could do this. He's a great guy. I don't want to cause him any harm, but I can't see myself living like this. So she goes and she says, they go to front of the rabbi, and the rabbi says, no problem, just give me 2 minutes. And he goes into this, he takes out this old mirror, and he goes and he calls the girl, and then he says, look in the mirror. And she goes into the mirror, and she's like shocked. She sees that she has the hump, and she's like, she's like feeling back, and she's like, would you curse me with? You gave me the hump now because I don't want it. And she starts screaming at him. He's like, how do you do this to me? He says, now you're going to curse me with the hump. And his rabbi, he says, relax. So he says, sit down and let me explain to you what happened. He says, there was the way that it works in heaven is it's called there's like a place where the souls rest, where the souls are before they get reincarnated. So it says there were two souls lined up, a female and a male, to go down. And the female was supposed to come really deformed. And the male was looking at this female deformed, that's come in a deformed body, and he's going to say, no one's going to marry this person. No one's going to ever do that. So he goes, and he says, female they need looks. They need to have some sort of beauty to them, otherwise they're not going to get married. If they have money, if they can get around things. So the guy says, listen, I'll take it upon myself, take away the hump, and then give it to me. So the soul was like, really, you'll do that for me? It's like, absolutely. And they go and they take it away, right? And then, then he goes, the rabbi goes over to the 2 souls, and he says, your husband over here, the one you were supposed to get him, he took it away from you. He says, now think again. If you want to get a divorce, I'll give you a divorce. He says, but I don't know if you're going to get me to keep this arrangement made afterwards. And she's like, what? Says, if that's the case, I'm going to stay with my husband. I'm going to stick with him. So again, here we see like this connection of these 2 souls together was preordained, which really the definition of soulmate is a preordained soul a match, right? Doesn't mean that it was one original soul or one not.Maybe yes, maybe not. But it was a preordained match. That should be. It could also be a soulmate for X amount of time. So now, and we'll finish with the following with the last story about the soulmates. And next week we're going to have to catch up because I wanted to catch up on this week for things I missed last week. So we're going to on different parts of reincarnation. So there was once I guess it's always easy to say it in the story. There was once a guy that went over to the rabbi, and he says another story about divorce. He was like, I can't deal with my wife. I'm getting a divorce. I'm getting it right now. And the rabbi started, says, listen, maybe there's something you could do, maybe we can work it out. He says, nothing doing. She nags, she doesn't stop screaming at me, she doesn't, I can't, I'm going out of my skin. He says, I want a divorce right now. So the rabbi says, so fine, come tomorrow, we'll write up a divorce. So they come up the next day, and the rabbi looks at the husband and the wife, and they go through all the formalities, and they sign a divorce. Now, as the rabbi hands over the papers to this guy, he looks at him in the face and he says, "Next time, keep your mouth shut." The guy nods his head, looking down, and he walks out. There was one associate rabbis there. The rabbi was like, "Why didn't you tell him to keep his mouth shut? It was she the one that was yakking. We even saw her in court today. She didn't stop screaming at him." So he said. So the rabbi said, it's also crazy. How do they know these stories? Listen to what happened in this story. So it says, the rabbi. Is he talking about rabbis in a different generation? Rabbis that were completely spiritual to such an extent that they were, privy of Ruach HaKodesh. They were privy of the supernatural. So he says that the rabbis came and what happened was there was a guy that was very righteous. He was Talmid Chacham and he died. And when he got to heaven, he was not, all his mitzvot was a little bit tainted. All his good deeds were there. He was good. He was a great guy. But it was a little bit like muddy. There was something wrong with it. They were like, what's up with that? So they looked into it, and this righteous guy said, "Listen, it's this, I was really trying to be a good guy, but I had a really bad wife. She caused me so much heartache. I tried to learn every time she was screaming at me, so I really tried, but says that's the taint of all my mitzvot. I couldn't do it with such happiness." So they asked him, says, "Why didn't you just get divorced? And you would have been able to serve God out of happiness." So he said, "Listen, I thought that if I get divorced, I'm just going to have to come back in another reincarnation and deal with her again. I thought this was my punishment. Let me deal with it now and get finished with it." So they were going back and forth. Should we send him straight to heaven? Should we not? And then there was one guy one angel that popped up and he said, "Listen," says, "if he really believed so much that it's ordained from heaven, he should have accepted out of love. And because he didn't accept it out of love, and he had that brown little muddiness on the mitzvah, he doesn't deserve the full righteous reward." So now they brought up this dispute, and once you bring up something in heaven, it doesn't just come on, this is an angel's, this is a slow angel, okay, all right, thank you very much. It doesn't work that way, right? Everything in there comes into an exact formula. So they said, he brought up a valid point, what are we going to do? So they're going back and forth, finally they decided, crazy thing, this is the first time I heard about this, and it was also, said this angel is going to go back, and going to turn into a soul somehow, and is going to go back into this world, and he's going to be married to this woman. And we'll see how he does. So he goes and they bring him back into this world, and he says that was the guy who saw. That's what I told him. He says next time keep your mouth shut. I meant in heaven. So keep your mouth shut in heaven, so this way you don't have to bring yourself to this thing. Now these are very very deep stories. I don't know which rabbi had said about it. I don't know if it's true or not. But the point of the lesson learned is what. Yeah, I'll tell you what
He got a divorce eventually?
He got a divorce. This is the case. This is the case that he went to the court case. Now, the reason why, there's sometimes that there's certain rabbis that they won't say a story unless they validate it. I'm not like that. Because if you could learn something from the story, I don't care where it's from. I don't know if I pick a story from that. But the point, I'll give you the best example, is you have Yisro, right? Yisro, there was one big famous Gentile that converted because they heard Matan Torah. What happened to everybody else? They all heard about it. Why didn't none?
It was a reincarnation.
Well, besides that also. You weren't here last week,
I heard this.
Yeah, so we spoke about that last week. So he said, but at the end of the day, everybody heard about the Matan Torah. One guy was like, all right, sounds pretty legit. I hear the sky shaking and everything I'm going to go join with the winning team.